Hello, everybody. Welcome back again to another episode of the Oner podcast, the podcast where we break down and review films all in one big, long, unbroken take. I'm Austin Archer, and with me, as always, is my childhood next-door neighbor and lifelong best friend,
Cramer, England.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we are here. We are at the pinnacle of our Tom Cruise-a-thon. We did 2 Mission Impossible movies and 1 non-mission movie.
Well, we did. Yes.
Yeah.
We
We
did.
did
Three
Minority
Tom Cruise movies.
3 Tom Cruise movies, and I'm glad we did it because the guy is look, and I'm not speaking about his personal life.
Yes.
I'm not speaking about his religious affiliation.
Yes.
I'm not speaking about the jumping on the chairs at Oprah. As an entertainer,
Yeah.
as an actor,
Yeah.
he's one of one. He's
Yeah.
There's just nobody quite like him.
No.
And he's got like the best movie star name of all time.
Yeah. And that's not even his real name.
Of course not.
No, but it's
His
so
name's not
good.
Tom Cruise.
Yeah. I think it's his middle. Well, was it his middle name?
Tony Jetpack? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
You know, like,
what a name.
yeah. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
No, but Tom Cruise he's the guy, man. Like he's been there our entire lives.
Oh yeah.
He's been doing this.
Yeah.
And this franchise really is something. I tell you.
Yes. It really is. He set out to make something that was kind of all his own and that featured everything that he's really good at. First of all, running.
Yeah.
Every movie there's a lot of running, which is good. He's a very good runner. But it also, I mean, it shows a lot of range as far as his acting abilities, but then it shows his stunt work, like everything that he does. And that's what's so great about these movies is they are good stories. They're solid, really well-made stories, but they have so much fun in them. This is like everything great about a blockbuster. This is everything you want from a blockbuster. It's fun. It's got a good story. There's definitely cheesy parts.
Yeah.
There's definitely things that don't hit perfectly, but it's all done really, really well. Everybody's giving their best. Everybody's giving into it, and they make the movies that they want to make. I love these movies.
I love these movies too. And you know, as maybe outlandish as elements of the plots of the different movies can get, where they always have to kind of heighten. Like I just watched the first movie the other day and it's like fairly straightforward.
Yeah.
It's just like they don't always feel the need to be like, we need to up the ante of how can this situation get even crazier and even crazier. And there's plenty in there. I mean, he jumps onto a helicopter from a speeding train that's already in a tunnel and blows it up and then jumps back onto the train, and then a helicopter propeller comes inches from it. You know, like they were definitely in a heightened space from the very jump.
Oh, yeah.
But it feels like successively with each film, they go more and more with their big kind of set piece, like central, like big action set piece of like, how can we, you know, like with Fallout with the helicopter dogfight, it's just like, how can we push it up more and more? How can we keep intensifying the peril and I feel like sometimes audiences kind of check out on stuff like that because they feel like there's no stakes here. I know Ethan Hunt's gonna win. Or when you're watching like a James Bond movie, it's like, I know what's gonna happen. James Bond's gonna win. I'm not afraid that he's not going to win. The reason why this franchise is so special is because there are real world stakes at play. And even though we all know before we go see the movie that Tom Cruise definitely survived the shooting process, when you're watching these sequences that feel ridiculous or feel outlandish or feel like they're pushing it too far, you constantly have to remind yourself, wait, but this is the guy that actually figures out how to do it.
Yeah.
And so in a way, this franchise is like the story of Tom Cruise's life. And each movie is an impossible mission of its own, where it's like every movie they set out to do something that they shouldn't be able to do, that you should like, where they're like, oh, what if we tried this? And then if you actually study the story of these films, they always get people who come back and go, here are 10 very good reasons why you can't do that. Why that's impossible. And then Tom Cruise and his team figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, but that's what happens in the movies is like, they go, well, here's what we want to do. And people go, you can't do that. That's impossible. And they go, well, we're going to figure out how to do it. And then they do it. But then like these movies are, it's like, this franchise.
Yeah.
Is them again and again and again, figuring out how to do the impossible.
Yeah. and making it look great, and
Mhm.
Tom putting his life on the line. I mean, they're as careful as they need to be. They're all very, very careful, but still he's putting his body on the line and everything on the line to make these movies what they are. And
You
they're all with his insurance company, because he has to be insured. He has to be covered. And his insurance company, it seems like every story is like, oh yeah, the insurance company didn't want to cover this, but we found a way and I just talked him into it. And it's like, I can't believe you did that. Like, that is,
Yeah,
it's
Paramount and
amazing.
Skydance and these companies that are funding these films are
Yeah.
funding them to the tune of several $100 million a pop. So
Hmm.
when your star is going, I might not make it through the shoot because I want because of this thing I want to do. That's a lot of money that's invested into this thing.
Yeah.
That's got to be there's got to be an insurance policy on it
Yeah.
of how do we recoup if Tom dies? Because
Yeah.
every movie it's what if Tom dies,
Yeah.
and every time it's not just like a there was an outside chance. It's like, no, there's a very good chance. Like when he hung off a plane in Rogue Nation, they were like, yeah, at this speed, a projectile could hit you and kill you.
Yeah.
If there's
Yeah.
just like something
If you
caught
get
in
hit
the
by a bird, yeah.
yeah, a bird, a pebble that's flying fast enough that gets caught in this wind stream could break through your skull or break the skin, like, or
Yeah.
seriously injure you. And then while you're hanging on to the plane and you're only tethered to the plane by a single wire, let's say you do get hit by a pebble and it like knocks you out. And
Yeah.
then you're like dangling by the wire and slapping against the side of the fuselage, like you're dead, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that happened in Dead Reckoning, the big major stunt that's in all the trailers and on all the posters. Like he was tethered to those planes by one wire, and it was just a wire that they would tether his harness to.
Mhm.
But it's like if he's still the one gripping the plane,
Yeah.
he's still the one holding on, and if he loses his grip, he's just swinging by a wire from this
Yeah.
plane.
Yeah.
And
You mean the final reckoning?
yeah, this latest
In
one,
the end of this one,
yeah.
yes. Yeah.
But
Which we will get to that, but yeah.
we will get to that. But it's like, yeah, like, when they wanted to climb the Burj Khalifa, they went
Yeah.
to the building and the building was like, oh, it turns out you can't, there's not really a way to rig the cameras the way that you want to do it. So you might just have to like, and obviously most productions would just go, okay, can't do it. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just not
yeah.
possible
Yeah.
because what they had to do was physically alter the structure of the building so that they had to blow out 26 windows and remake the structure of the building to accommodate camera rigging. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
cool. Most productions would just go, "Oh, it can't be done."
Mhm.
Like, we will go and build a replica of the out exterior of the Burj Khalifa in a studio and then green screen in the image of, Dubai below.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and that's how most people would do that, but they were just like, "No, we're just going to do whatever it takes to do
Yeah.
it in camera."
Yeah.
And that
It
crazy.
really yeah, it really makes it so much more immersive. And again, like this is one of the things about the whole series is like, all right, which stunt did Tom Cruise do in this one?
Mhm.
And then everybody says, "Oh, he did that for real." Like he
Yeah.
did that, and it makes it so much more of a it makes it so much more engaging because it's not green screen.
Yeah.
It's not like they're obviously doing shots in there that kind of fill in, but it just makes it so much more fun to watch these movies. I love them. They're great.
Let's get into this one. There's a lot to talk about. If you have
There
not
is.
seen Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, it's in theaters right now. Please go see this one on
Yeah,
the
go
biggest
see it.
screen. You can go see it in IMAX. Go see it on I mean, it is just they've earned it. They've earned your money. They
They have.
have.
They have. And
They,
we got to say we this was one of our predictions.
yeah,
This movie. I can't remember exactly. I said I thought it was I said for sure it was going to make $1 billion. I don't know if that's going to happen. But I did think I think I said that I didn't think this was going to be the best one, but I think it was going to be a really good ending. I'd have to look back again, but I think I was right. I think
Yeah,
that we're
I think
going.
my prediction was something like that, where I was like, I don't really ever dislike these movies. I'm
Yes.
always down for the ride. I don't think that they're ever like, life-changing cinema or anything, but boy,
Mhm.
is it fun. And I had such a good time
Oh,
watching
me
this last
too.
installment. This was in many ways the Avengers Endgame of the Mission franchise,
Yeah, yeah,
where they're really trying to do that thing where they're trying to pull it all together. And they've
yeah.
got a lot of threads, and not all of them make it in there. Jules doesn't make a comeback or anything, but I think we've kind of
No.
settled the Jules storyline in
Yeah,
Fallout.
yeah,
And
yeah,
but the amount that they do manage to bring back in, I found impressive, and it
Yeah.
felt pretty for the most part well balanced.
It
You
did.
know,
Yeah, it felt very natural and it all culminated. It definitely didn't feel like they were shoehorning anything in. I felt like it did all close the series very, very well. It was and it did tie up some loose ends, especially with Mission Impossible 3, which we reviewed last week, which we'll get to, but that was a really interesting way to bring 3 back into it. But there's still a lot of side characters that we don't really get a complete close to, but that happens. But the main people, you know, it was a very satisfying ending, and I felt like this is a good way to end this franchise
and we
for
will
these
talk
8 movies.
we'll talk more about that later too, because I hope it is the ending, and
Yeah, that's true.
there's
That's
kind
right,
of
that was
that.
the other thing that we said,
Right.
because I don't think this is gonna be the ending of the movie, the Mission Impossible movies, but
I hope it's the end of the Ethan Hunt storyline starring
yeah,
Tom
me
Cruise.
too. Yeah.
I hope that not because of not necessarily because I'm tired of him or anything like
Yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Mostly just because I like stories to have an ending.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just don't really like it when something just goes on, and it feels like if they keep going, it's like, well, you might. It's kind of like when like an athlete has an amazing career and they don't know when to hang it up, and it's
Yeah,
sort of like
yeah.
it's like those bonus Michael Jordan years where you're like, I kind of wish you didn't go play for the Wizards, and like,
Yeah.
or like I wish Karl Malone didn't play for the
The
Lakers for a couple
Lakers.
seasons.
Yeah.
It just feels like it sort of like puts this taste in your mouth where like you had such a special career and you did so many cool things and you could have just
Yeah.
like ended it on a really nice note and gone, that's a nice round shape to my
Yep.
professional playing days, but you
Yeah.
couldn't. You just needed to squeeze a few more $1 million out of you needed. and
Yeah.
and then the ultimate ending is like, it's kind of anticlimactic,
Yeah. Yeah.
and to be able to end a story like a 30-year franchise like this on a note like this, I'm like, take the W.
Yep. Yep.
It's Tom Brady winning the Super Bowl with Tampa Bay. It's like, dude, retire. Take it.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
just end it.
you did it, dude. Like you went
Yeah.
to a whole other team and and proved
Yeah.
that you could do it without Belichick. Take it and quit. And he
Yeah.
didn't. Of course, he didn't.
Yeah. He didn't.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah. So
Yeah, so let's hope this is the end for him, for Ethan Hunt, because
right.
it's a good way to end it. Good way to close it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Okay, so this movie, I right off the bat, I really liked. I gotta say, throughout the entire movie, I loved the score. I thought
Yes. Yeah.
it's a woman, I think, that did the score for this one, and I'll have to look, but I noticed because I just went and watched the first one again. She does a thing with the Paramount logo coming in that basically is mimicking what the first one did. So the first, because I was like, oh, that kind of sounds like a marching band. Like it's like this snare drum, and it sounds like it's
Yeah.
like this really like. And I kind of thought we were gonna open the movie on like a marching band or something
Yeah,
because
that's right,
it's.
yeah.
And then we didn't, and I was like, "Oh, weird choice," but that's actually exactly how the first one starts. The first one starts with
Oh,
a s-
okay.
like that snare drum,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I was like, oh, she was doing an homage to round out the edges of this franchise
Yeah,
to
yeah.
the score for the first one. And
Yeah. So the composers were actually Max Arouge and Alfie Godfrey.
oh, okay, all right,
But
I
yeah,
I'm wrong.
I do like this opening. I did like the score for this one for
I
sure.
misgendered our composers, but I loved how big it was for the entire thing.
Yes.
It was so unapologetically big. The score for throughout the entire movie was so like there and present,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
liked it. I was
Uh-huh.
like, yeah, I'm glad that it's here. We start the movie with Ethan watching basically a recap tape. It's basically like
Yeah.
last time on
Yeah.
Mission Impossible.
That's time on the previous 7 Mission Impossibles.
Yeah, previously on Mission Impossible, and he
Yeah.
puts it in like a VHS tape, and that's a big thing in this
Yeah.
movie is analog tech
Yep.
versus
Digital.
digital
Yeah.
modern AI tech, and that's a
Mhm.
big theme in the film. Is Tom Cruise is kind of a movie star from the analog era, and the way he likes to do things is he we are entering an era of filmmaking where you will be able to make photorealistic stunts for films using fully AI generated animation,
Mhm.
and it will look within 2 to 3 years it will look completely unmistakable. And he prefers to do it real. He
Yeah, yeah,
prefers to do it
yeah.
analog style, and that's sort of a big commentary being made in this film kind of throughout is like, we do it the tactile way. And
Yes.
so like, but yeah, this VHS kind of takes us through this it reminds us the story and the stakes of the previous film because this is sort of a two-parter, this
Right.
reckoning
Right.
duology.
Yeah.
And
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 this is all from Angela Bassett, who
mhm,
is the president now.
yeah.
She was the director of the CIA. Now she's the president. And I really like Angela Bassett, and I actually like
Oh,
her character in these movies. Like she's really good in these last 3 or 4 that she's been in.
oh, we've got a fantastic supporting cast
Yeah.
in this movie and in the last several movies.
Yes.
Everybody's bringing it, especially in this last one. I was like, everybody's really taking advantage of their moments.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Everybody.
yeah,
But if this movie's going to have a common criticism that you're going to see from a lot of critics, it's going to be that the first act of the
yeah,
film is very exposition and
yeah.
flashback heavy.
Yep.
And I've been sitting with this and thinking about it because I was watching it going, okay, the flashbacks are getting a bit much.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
doing a lot of them. Even as Ethan is watching this tape, he's flashing back to previous
yeah.
movies and thinking about previous missions and all this stuff. And it did like after like 40 minutes of that, I was like, okay, on rewatch, this is probably going to be a little bit laborious, all the
Yeah,
flashbacks.
yeah.
But I was also like, if you just tried to do a movie like this that's trying to tie up a 30-year franchise and you
Mhm.
just assumed that everyone remembers everything that's happened in all
Yeah.
8 films, I don't think you can. And I heard
No.
Christopher McQuarrie talking about this on a podcast. He's like, we cut it so many different ways, and we realized sometimes you just got to tell them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes, and I was like, I was thinking about it. I was like, in Avengers Endgame, the way that they did it for us is they did the time travel storyline.
Right.
So they
Right.
basically traveled through the MCU and they did
Yeah.
like a visual history of them, and again, it's like what they're doing there with a story device is like, remember this from
Yeah.
Thor the Dark World and remember
Yeah.
this from, and we're going on kind of a journey through the films. Remember this from the first Avengers movie
Yeah.
and maybe that's but like you can't really do that in Mission Impossible. You can't have Ethan Hunt time traveling through the films.
No, no. And yeah, it really I mean it is a recap. They at least make it was fun. I think the nice thing about this on rewatch when you get it in when you stream it, you could just skip over a lot of this,
Yeah.
but it is a good way to remind everything to remind you of everything. It is very, very exposition heavy, but in this type of movie, you kind of have to, like you're saying, it just kind of has to happen just to get everybody kind of situated where you're supposed to be and oriented to the story of the entire franchise. And Angela Bassett is kind of telling Tom Cruise, like, oh, you did this, this, and this, and this, and goes through everything. One important thing she brings up, well, there's two important things. One thing is she says that the entity has created like a cult, and there are like these what do they call them? They're followers that are just completely uh they're into it, right? They
I
they
I
are
I kind of wish the movie had done more with this, to be
Yeah,
honest.
I think
It's such it's a
it's more of a red
very
herring, but
but it's
yes.
a very interesting thing to bring up, and then the movie doesn't really have anything they don't wind up maybe they shot scenes, I'm sure they did. Christopher McQuarrie always talks about how much they shoot for these films.
Well,
Maybe they shot more scenes with the cult
yeah.
members.
I mean,
I
the
think
one
we
the one thing is in the submarine.
Yep, yep, yep,
That's the big thing. And
right.
then they do kind of a red herring. At least I felt it was red herring with uh what's his name? When at the end with the president, where
Right, with Nick Offerman.
Nick,
Yep,
thank you.
Nick, yep,
Yeah, yeah.
mhm, yep.
That definitely seemed like it was going to be that. But they could have done more. It actually, but in a
It's a
movie
very
this big.
Listen, I actually find the idea of the entity utterly terrifying, because we are no longer in the era where this is like some far-fetched sci-fi,
Yeah.
maybe in the future someday. We are literally living through it's so weird. Like what I kept thinking the whole time I was watching this movie in the theater is, wow, the stakes are I'm really
Yeah,
feeling the
yeah.
stakes
Yeah.
of this film. And it's
Yes.
hard to do in a movie where you know the ending. Kind of like
Yeah.
Avengers Endgame, it's like we know they're going to win.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
even
Yeah.
though they lost in Infinity War, it's like
Yeah.
but the fact that they can make Thanos an imposing enough threat
Yeah.
that you still feel like I bet some of our main characters aren't gonna make it out alive. Like, there's a possibility that even though Ethan's team's gonna win, since this is I don't know that Ethan's gonna win or
Right,
make it
right.
out, you know? And
Yeah.
and also the idea of this entity, which is the entity is basically this AI that is kind of it has evolved to the point where it does so many projections into the future using calculations and algorithms that it
Yeah.
can basically predict what people are going to do,
Yeah.
and it's scheming and making plans. And in this movie, it's basically it's it's kind of uncoupled itself from Gabriel, our villain
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
previous film, and it now wants to infiltrate all of the world's nuclear arsenals.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's so interesting because um so this movie and Seven, Dead Reckoning and this are very connected. I felt like the way that they used the entity in this movie was far more effective than the way that they did in the last movie.
you meant Mission Impossible 7. I thought you meant the movie 7, and I was
No,
like,
sorry,
"What?"
sorry, sorry.
I was
Dead
like, "You're gonna,"
Reckoning,
I was
Mission
like, "You're gonna have
Impossible
to
Dead
walk me
Reckoning.
through this one."
No, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning
Yeah,
was definitely they're connected. So the
yeah.
entity comes up in 7 and I just didn't ever feel like it just seemed like a 50s view of AI. And in this one, it's like it's changing. You don't know what photos are real. You don't know what information is real. And that's such a present problem that we have right now. Like, the Pope with the puffy coat. So many people thought that was a real image and it was an AI generated image. And so it's like, okay, this feels so much more tangible than the last movie. So I
I don't
really
even
liked it a lot more.
But I don't even think that they changed the presentation of the entity all that much. I think what's changed is our understanding of
Yeah.
our relationship to artificial intelligence. So in the years between Dead Reckoning and the Final Reckoning,
Mhm.
we've a lot has happened with AI
Yes. Yeah.
and continues to happen. Where now, when we have the idea of an AI getting to the point where it goes, oh, I actually kind of have a sense of self determination and like I
Yeah.
want to start making plans for myself. And we think about the idea of an AI infiltrating nuclear silos, it doesn't, it actually feels like something that could potentially happen in the next like 5 years.
Right.
And
Right.
that's a really scary thing to kind of existentially confront while you're watching this movie. And I was
Mhm.
definitely sitting there going, this is no longer like some far-fetched, you know, kind of silly idea. This is like,
It's true.
like I think increasingly we're going to be telling stories about our fears surrounding AI,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we're reckoning with the new world that we live in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um but yeah, Ethan's got to take on the entity in Gabriel, which means they throughout this whole entire movie they kind of have to use analog tech, and
Yeah.
they've got to really be careful about what devices they're communicating on and things like that because the entity is kind of ever present, and
Yeah.
that makes and I feel like they for a movie where you know that the heroes are going to win, I feel like they did a really good job of keeping a sense of dread throughout.
Yeah. Yeah. They do, and they use it. Well, and early on they do, which we'll get to. They up the stakes in a sad but good way.
Yeah.
Which I mean, this happened. I don't remember how early on this is, but yeah, basically, Ethan gets this directive from the president saying like, please help us, and she's on his side, which we established at the very beginning. She is on his side. She wants him. She feels he's the only one that can really make this all happen, and they need him to bring in the cruciform key that he found from the last movie.
Yeah.
Like, you need to come in and you need to fix all of this.
Yeah, the mission that she's giving him here is please come in and give us the
Yeah.
key. And
Yeah.
he doesn't immediately accept. He decides no, that I gotta go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically, what I like about these two movies, Dead Reckoning and Final Reckoning 2, is like the need to be like anything that we would normally do, the entity would probably predicted we would do. So we always have to take and you see that again and again in the action sequences, like Ethan making decisions that don't really make sense because he's
Yeah.
like, I have to, the only way to do it is the least likely way. And
Yeah.
again, it's like the theme of this franchise where it's just like, oh yeah, the only way to kind of the theme of the franchise is we have to do something impossible and there's only one way to do it right. And we've
Yeah.
got to get it, just right. And but even more so here, Ethan's got to sort of outthink this machine that's like, I already know what you would do based
Yeah.
on your file and your previous history. And so he's always trying to stay one step ahead of it. And early on, he's struggling to do that. He
Yeah.
decides to go to this party where they think Gabriel might be because they found out Gabriel and the
Yeah.
entity have kind of split up.
Well,
And
I guess this happened in the beginning
yeah,
with the videotape. We find out what the rabbit's foot is.
that's right.
We find out that the rabbit's foot from Mission Impossible 3 was an early version of the
The entity.
AI that
Yeah.
is the entity now,
Yeah.
right? And how did you feel about that? What did you think about that reveal?
I'm fine with it. I think that it always felt to me like the rabbit's foot was like a biological weapon.
Yeah, because it
The
has the symbol on it.
Yeah, the way that it's canistered, but I also could see I like the idea of them doing that as a misdirect, that they package it in a way that looks like it's something other than it is, and what it actually is this thing that they knew from the jump had the
Mhm.
potential to be a world-ending kind of
Yeah,
like whoever controls this AI and controls this
right.
algorithm will basically be able to do whatever they
Yeah,
want, and I like that. I like that, like, I mean, if you're gonna call something the anti-god, it should be this thing that truly has the power to
yeah,
end all
yeah,
life on Earth.
yeah, and I think, I agree. I agree with you. I was at first, I was kinda like, "Well, that's kinda dumb," dumb because I thought it was biological, but, after a while, it it does you have the I mean, J.J. Abrams they never thought of this, right? They never obviously they
Yeah,
retconned it a little bit, but the fact that they set up the clout of it being an anti-god, uh, this was a good way to kind of like give it even more stakes and even more gravitas to what the entity really is, right? Like he
yeah,
took like there was so much there's so much clout around it with Benji talking about it being the anti-god. So I was like, okay, yeah, that's a pretty good way to like
sure.
see how important it was. So I thought, okay, that was pretty cool. And I was glad that we actually reviewed Mission Impossible 3 because it really
Yeah.
that one feeds in the most probably to this movie that's outside,
Yeah, it's just,
7.
they're connecting a lot of dots throughout the entire franchise
Yeah.
and showing how lots of different, and mostly I think it works, So Ethan goes to this party to get Gabriel,
Yeah.
and pretty quickly he and whatever the girl's name is, Agent Carter,
Yeah. Haley Atwell's
Haley Atwell.
Grace. Yeah, her
Yeah,
name.
and they get detained by Gabriel's people and taken in, and they're prisoners, which we've seen Ethan in this situation at the beginning of several films, where
Hmm.
he's, yeah, how are you going to get out of this one? And um, basically, long story short, there's not really much here other than like they're going to come in and torture them, and Ethan breaks out, and
Yeah.
he and Grace beat up the bad guys, and Ethan kills them,
Yeah.
and I kind of liked this, like the whole like just having the camera on Grace's reaction to Ethan, using these
Yeah. Yeah.
weapons on
That's
these
right.
guys.
Like, because
Yeah.
you see all the weapons and then she's just like, oh, oh. And then he comes in with blood and yeah, that was pretty funny.
Yeah, he's got blood all over his shirt,
Yeah.
and they've always got to find a way to get Tom Cruise shirtless to remind us, like, hey, even at 62, check it out. And we're like, yeah, I mean, yeah, he's still look at him go, you
Yeah,
know.
which I gotta say, okay, so actually one of my friends commented on our last video, and so Tom Cruise is 62. Ian McKellen was 62 when he starred in Lord of the Rings. That makes no sense to me. Like, how are these two people the
You
same
know
age when
what?
they made these
I'll tell
movies?
you why. America. Okay, because America number one. All right.
Yep,
Ian
yep.
McKellen's one of those godless Brits. Like you can't keep up with Ian McKellen's not keeping up with Tom Cruise.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah,
They're eating beans and toast over there. He's not keeping a six pack.
yeah.
America. You
Yeah,
know?
right, right.
Yeah.
But that was crazy to me, but yeah, he takes off his shirt. He's still a very physically fit person, way more than I am, but yeah. Good
Yeah.
fun sequence.
They break
Uh,
out, Gabriel's running away, the chase is on, and it kind of
yep.
looks like Gabriel's almost led them to the entity, like he wants them to go, or the entity, maybe it's the other way around, maybe the
Yeah, yeah.
entity, because the entity kind of locks them out of being able to continue chasing Gabriel, and then they look, and there it is, this box that Gabriel used to
Yeah.
use to talk to the entity, and it's like, Ethan's like, all right, I'm gonna get in there, which is like, also I was like, dude, crazy.
Yeah.
Anything could happen in
Yeah.
there. This thing could just zap your brain and kill you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why it doesn't,
Yeah. Yeah.
and again, this was kind of another thing where like homegirl that is Mantis
Yeah. Uh,
from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Palm, Clement. I don't know how to pronounce her.
Clementif or
Clementif.
from
Yeah.
Clementif.
Yeah.
She's like, careful, it changes you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Which she died in the last movie.
yeah.
Like she was so dead in the last movie. Like there, I was
Yeah.
like, and then which I like her. I actually like her
Yeah.
character, and I like her as an actress.
Yeah.
But I was like, my son, because I took my son to this, just me and him, and he's like, "Didn't she die?" And I was like, "Yes, yes, she did."
Yes. Yes, she did. I don't care what they say. Yeah, but they have her back here, and
Yeah,
she's like,
yeah,
"Careful, it changes you." And I was kind of hoping again for another little bit more of a payoff on that. Same thing with like the cult. I'm like, "Oh,
yeah,
that's an
yeah.
interesting thing to set up that there are," and I think that I can see a future where there is an AI this is already happening, by the way. There
Mhm.
is already a movement amongst young people of just letting ChatGPT dictate their lives. I literally have had this is a real thing. I've had
Yeah,
young
yeah.
people ask me, they'd be like, "So all my friends are just the way that they go through their day-to-day life is they just ask ChatGPT what they should do and then they just do it. How do I get them to
Wow.
stop doing that?" And I'm like, "I don't know, dude." I'm like, "What are you talk like because to me that's like just the most moronic thing I've ever
Yeah,
heard."
yeah.
But that is as AI gets better and better at feeling like it's got good answers about things, this is going to become more and more common. There are going to be humans who want to unburden themselves from the problem of having to think
Right,
and
right.
having to like reason their way through life. And they're just going to go, I'm just going to ask this super smart uh, bunch of coding of millions of lines of code what I should do. And it'll probably have a better idea than I could come up with. And I'll just do
Right.
that. And with that is like, if this thing started trying to take over the world, you'd be like, hey, listen, I'm with you. I'm with you. And you could, I just don't think it's actually that far-fetched of a concept. And I'd
Right.
like to see more of it in this film. And this is another area where she's like, it changes you, where I'm like, I'd like to see how somehow Ethan Hunt going into this machine, I think we do sort of see it in the movie that he seems to understand the entity better
He does,
after
yeah.
this.
Yeah.
But I wonder about like, I don't know, like something that he's struggling with that it show like or
Yeah.
you know, but maybe yeah.
It just kind of it does seem to influence his plans of, like, how severe everything is and, like, how urgent everything is.
Yeah,
But
and
it coulda they could have definitely gone into it more.
yeah. And we do get just we get more flashbacks here. We get more, you know, the
Yeah,
entity is
yeah.
showing him scenes from previous movies and things like and then
Yeah,
showing him possible futures and things like that.
yeah, yeah,
And you know, uh he gets out and he seems to have a better understanding of what needs to be done after he has seen kind of the entity's game plan and end game. And again, once again, Ethan is the guy who sees the path through the narrow path, but it's
yeah.
just like this. It's kind of like Doctor Strange in Infinity War, where it's like there's this
Right.
one in like 14 million,
And 5, yeah.
whatever it is. Like there's this
Yeah,
one path, and it's highly unlikely, but if anyone can do it,
yeah,
it's Ethan and Benji and the gang.
yeah.
Um,
And they really set this up, which they really set this up as the impossible mission. Like,
right.
everything they have to do, which I actually really liked that. I was like, "I'm in. Let's do it."
Yeah,
And
I loved when like people would recount when he just as part of in order to get this done, like he just has to tell people what he's doing,
yeah,
and then they're like, "Sorry, you're gonna do this, then
yeah,
this, then this, then this," and he's like,
yeah,
"Hmm," and then they're
yeah,
like, "Oh, that's insane," but it's like,
yeah,
well, the world's gonna end in a few days, so
yeah.
you know,
And yes, that yeah, it is they continue to remind you of the stakes,
yeah.
which are good.
Yeah, Ethan realizes that Gabriel's probably going to go after Luther. We established this
Yeah,
earlier in the film that they have sort of an underground base in London where Luther is set up. And Luther, I
yeah,
forgot this that Luther's like sick. I guess he has like cancer or something.
yeah.
Did they establish that in the previous film?
I do not remember that
I
in the
didn't
previous
remember that
film,
being established, but
but yeah, he's somehow sick, and
yeah,
yeah, we'll see. But yeah, he's kind of like living. They're keeping him alive in this little bunker, and I think Gabriel doesn't he say like someone that you love is gonna die tonight
yeah,
again, and Ethan realizes it's gonna be Luther, so he runs to him, and he gets
Great Tom
there.
Cruise running scene. He's
Yeah.
running down the bridge in London, not the London Bridge, but the bridge that's like that's by Big Ben. That's like that
Yeah.
goes across the town. He's hauling.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's trying to get to Luther in time, and yeah,
Yeah, and he makes it there, but Luther's already accepted his fate, and he says, they kind of have
yeah.
a good
Gabriel
moment.
locks him in a cage with a
Yeah.
bomb, and
Yeah.
basically Luther can like it's like a 16 megaton nuclear bomb,
Yeah.
and Luther can disarm the bomb to make it just a bomb that's going to sort of collapse the tunnels that they're in,
Yeah.
but it won't decimate the entire city. But he can't fully disarm the bomb in the amount of time that he has. And this was a moment that I know that the movie wants Luther and Ethan to have a
Mhm.
parting emotional
Yeah, yeah.
goodbye. But I was literally sitting there. This is one of those movie tropes where I'm like, you have 2.5 minutes to get away from a nuclear bomb
Yeah, yeah.
that Luther's trying to make less severe,
Yeah.
and he takes it down to 20 seconds before he starts running away. And I'm like, no, you're
Yeah.
dead.
Yeah.
No, like I know Tom Cruise can run really fast. You
Yeah.
can't run fast enough in 20 seconds to
Yeah.
clear the blast radius of that thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, no. And I as I'm watching that, the movie is just prolonging this scene of him and Luther talking to each other. I'm going
Yeah.
like, you don't have time.
Yeah, get
When
out
you
of there.
when you arrived, you were out of time. Like
Yeah.
when you got there, it was too late and you needed to turn around and run.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, but they have it, and Luther says something before he dies. What does he say? He says, like, no one can stop. Oh god, I forgot what he says, but I think that actually calls back to the Phineas Freak, right? Like,
Yeah.
you can't stop Phineas Freak, which I think he says in the first or the second movie. I
Yep.
went back and read that, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool," like, because I couldn't really remember it. Again, a little callback, but this is the end of Luther Stickle, which who he was the only other one that was in every other movie, even though he's only a cameo in 4.
Yeah, and if
Uh,
they make another movie and they say that Luther survived, I swear to God.
they
Like, no,
better
he
not.
did not.
They better not. No, no, he
We
died.
didn't we didn't see an on-screen death, but he's dead. He's
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
he's gone,
he's
which
dead.
Luther's been a great character in
Yeah.
these movies. He's awesome. So,
Yeah, and Luther's made this, like, poison pill that is
yeah,
for the entity, and there's this whole plan where involving the submarine from the first movie where,
yep,
the submarine that we saw crash at the beginning of not the first movie, but Dead Reckoning, movie
yes,
7,
yeah,
we saw a submarine crash, and that's sorta like the origin point of the entity. It's like where the entity was unleashed first, and
yeah,
they find out that they can get a drive from that subway if they can find it, where they can put this poison pill in, and it will, like, force the entity to have to escape into this other drive, and
yeah,
that's sort of the plan, and it's all a
yeah,
very long shot because they have to A, find out where the sunken submarine is,
yeah,
B, get onto the submarine and retrieve the drive, which it's sunken in, like, the Arctic Ocean
yeah, like
or
really far down,
the Bering
really far down.
Strait Sea,
Yeah,
um, and then they have to get it, to get
yeah.
all this, but yeah, they're on the move now, and, is this when he decides to go to America, or is this when he breaks?
So I think he goes back and he tells everybody, he tells like the president and the general and all the heads of, the American intelligence what he needs because he needs a ship. He
And
needs
at
to
some
go and
point,
find a ship.
we
Or
have the intro, like, we have a really
yeah, yeah,
long
yeah, yeah.
prologue here.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
A lot of this stuff takes place in the prologue. When does it finally go to dun 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 dun? Like, when do we
I
finally
think
go?
it was
Is it
I don't even
before or
remember.
after the party with Gabriel?
I want to say it's after.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
pretty.
it's after.
Yeah, we got like a pretty decently sized. I think once I think it's after Luther's dead too. I
I
think
think it
Luther
is, yeah.
dies in the
Yeah.
prologue, and then once Ethan's like, okay, well, here's the mission, here's what we need to do.
Yeah.
We go into the opening titles, and
Yeah,
then
and then we see all the generals and everything, and they're like, "This guy did what?" That you see from the
yeah,
trailer, and they're
that's
like,
Holt McElhenney is one of the guys. Holt McElhenney
"Yes,
is
yes."
I was in a TV show
I
with
was gonna
Holt.
say, yeah, you were with him,
Yeah,
right? So yeah,
yeah.
yeah, he's getting bigger, and he's a good actor.
Yeah, one of my favorite videos I ever made was was doing a sketch with Jonathan Groff where I said, "Hey Jonathan, who do you think would win in a contest between you or me about who's better looking?" And then Holt didn't know that we were doing like a bit, and he was in the front seat, and you can just hear him off camera going, out of you and Jonathan.
I remember that video because
Yeah.
doesn't Jonathan just like move out of the
Yeah,
way?
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
do
yeah.
one video where I go, "Hey, Jonathan, do you want to hang out after work tonight?" And he just backs out of the camera like
Oh, okay,
this.
okay, yeah,
And
yeah,
then the
yeah,
second was me going, "Hey, Jonathan, if we had a contest to see who was better looking, me or you, who do you think would win?" And
yeah.
then Holt didn't know that I was like making a video. He thought I just asked him that. He's just in the front seat and he goes, "Out of you and Jonathan?" And I just like start laughing because I'm like, "It was a joke."
I gotta go find
Uh,
that video now. That's awesome.
Obviously, it's
Yeah,
Jonathan.
yeah, yeah. He's a very
But
good-looking man.
he's a
Yes.
very good looking man. So is Holt. But
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
Holt's
he's gotten bigger in the last few years,
yeah,
and I think that was that because it was Mind Hunters, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and that really seemed to put him. He's been around forever, but that seemed to put him on the map, and he's been doing a lot. And so it's him, and then it's why do I always forget his name? Uh, who we talked about before,
Oh, yeah,
Nick
Nick Offerman.
Offerman.
Nick
Sorry, yes,
Offerman and
and
the guy there's also, like, the guy that, like, from Dead Reckoning who kinda looks like Steve Zahn. I never know what this guy's name is, but he, like, hates
yes,
Ethan.
yes, yes. He's actually a big yeah. What is his?
We found out in this movie that he's John Voight's son.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
He's John Voight's son. So
yeah, and
there's
like
so much, bringing things which I am down with, but I'm also kinda like, Ethan Hunt didn't know that guy's son?
I know,
Like
yeah, that was kinda
like,
like I was kinda like, whatever,
yeah, I
like,
don't know
but it
about
worked
that.
out, but,
Yeah.
you
Mhm.
could have taken it or you could have left it and it would have been fine, but
Yeah.
yeah, that guy, he that it kinda gives him a little bit more motivation as to why he's so like, so hell-bent on capturing Ethan.
Yeah.
Gives him a little bit more
But I
backstory
don't
there, so
necessarily think that we need it.
I don't either.
There's always
I got it.
agents that just don't like Ethan because he's a
Yeah,
gambler and
yeah,
because he's insane and because
yeah,
he seems to just be lucky and doesn't
yeah,
actually it's like, dude, you're not like talented. You're like surviving on crazy whims of luck, you know?
yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah,
so I don't think we need, but we have
yeah,
that. Yeah, Ethan decides his best shot at accomplishing the mission is just to go straight to Mount Weather, where
yeah,
basically the United States military is hunkered down with their nuclear arsenal,
yeah,
knowing that all of these nuclear arsenals one by one are getting taken over by the entity, and they basically have like a 3-day doomsday clock on the wall.
yeah,
That's like
yeah,
in 72 hours, if the entity has taken over all of the world's nuclear arsenals but ours, we will launch a preemptive strike and
yeah, yeah,
we will basically, in it as a defensive measure to the entity, we will like
yeah,
show that we're capable of acting. But Tom Cruise, who's kind of the only one who's seen it and who knows what
yeah.
its plan is, has to just go in there and be like, "Listen, guys, this is crazy. You need to give me an aircraft carrier
Yeah. Yeah.
carrier on
An
the
aircraft
ocean,
carrier. Yeah.
and you need to let me have just like unfettered access to like basically anything I ask for, and you need to
Yeah.
tell all of your admirals on all of these vessels that they need to listen to me."
Yeah.
And of course the military guys are like, no, like
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely not. And I kind of like this that Angela Bassett's like, sorry, I can't give that to you. Like, she basically says, well, she hands him a letter and she says, like, I'm gonna launch these nukes in 3 days. You better believe
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
she tells him, and she tells the guards, like, take Ethan in, keep him in holding for the next 3 days. And they send him out, and you think like, oh geez, they didn't go for it.
Yeah.
But then as soon as they go out, the guards are like, all right, let's get you on this ship. Let's get you over
Yeah.
to this aircraft
Yeah.
carrier. And he's like,
Yeah.
yeah. So
So
she
she
kind of,
kind of like fooled the other people into believing that she was against him, but she gives him a letter which he doesn't really understand the meaning of, but basically it's like, go, you have 72 hours or I'm gonna launch these nukes.
yeah. And I kind of liked that she understands
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to do this with the approval of my council. I'm
Yeah.
just going to have to go over their heads.
Yeah.
And and that's again, this is like, I think these are the things that give the movie stakes
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
seeing like the president of the United States understand like in this situation where there's 3 days till likely the end of the world,
Yeah.
I'm going to trust this guy who time and time again has been able to do impossible things
Hmm.
and hope that he's got one more trick left up his sleeve.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
like, what else am I going to do?
Yeah. Yeah, and so he goes on the aircraft carrier and he sees Hannah Waddingham.
From
Uh
Ted Lasso.
yeah, it's from Ted Lasso, which she does a great American accent. The
I,
Brits
w-
are always better at American accents than the
I,
Americans are at
I
Brits
just have a
accents.
hard time believing Hannah Waddingham as like an American, let alone an American like general
General.
on a. I just was kind of like, okay, fine. Like
Yeah, I gave it.
some of this casting literally seemed like Tom Cruise or Chris McQuarrie were like watching TV at home and they were like, "Hey, call that person,"
Yeah, see
and
if
like
you
they
wanna
were
be in the
just
movie.
call Hannah Waddingham. I like her,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
like and
yeah,
because I just was kind of like, I don't know that,
yeah.
but
But she yeah, again, I just think her accent is good. I was like,
yeah,
"How's she gonna pull off an American accent?" And I was like, "Wow, she did a good job." But she gets a letter, which I actually once I saw the date, it was May 22nd, 1996.
yeah,
I was like, "Oh, that must have been the original release date of Mission Impossible 1."
probably,
And it was.
yeah.
It was like, okay. But then they say like she says to Ethan like, "Oh, this was a date where, we had to make a risky decision and someone wouldn't take the risk and a bunch of lives were lost." So
Yeah, it
that's
was like
basically the
leadership.
president.
Yeah, like the leadership wasn't willing to take the risk, and we
Yeah.
were trying to urge leadership to do it, and they wouldn't
Yeah.
do it. And now that we're the ones in the leadership positions, what
Yeah.
she's saying to me is, "We gotta do it."
Yeah, exactly. So she
Yeah.
gives, and she's not really in this movie very much, but she tells him basically about this submarine. They need to find the submarine, and the only way to get there is to get to one, a base in Alaska where, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in this movie that I was like, I don't
Well
really get every single thing that's going on, but they need to get to Alaska.
well,
And that's basically where they go.
Tom Cruise, writes in a notebook after he goes into the entity, "Sosis," and he
Mm.
hands that to Benji, and it's just the word "Sosis." And what that means is it's like the sonar something,
Right, right.
monitoring, and it's there are these stations all over the world where people monitor radioactivity with sonar, and there are these different, and he's just saying you need to find the radio station closest to where this sunken submarine might have been because they'll have a
Yeah,
report of it and we'll be able to pinpoint we should be able to pinpoint its location. And they need to do all this analog. This whole time Ethan is separated from his team and they can't communicate. They can't talk
yeah,
over
yeah.
phones, they can't eat, over computers. So he just has to tell them where to go. You need to go to this radio tower in
Mhm.
Alaska and ascertain the report, and then you need to transmit it back to me over VHF
Yeah,
frequency,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and and just let me know the spot, and then we need to meet up at the exact right time at the exact right moment in the same spot. And
Yeah,
I'm going to be coming from under the ice, and you guys are going to be above the ice,
yeah,
and we'll just hope that we're both there at the same time.
yeah,
And him explaining this plan to people that they're like, so your team, who you're not in contact with, who you
yeah,
have no way of contacting, they're going to get information from a radio tower in Alaska, and they're going to get a location that they're going to transmit to us from VHS frequencies. And you're going to swim down to the
yeah,
submarine, get this thing, swim up, and they're going to meet you there. And he's like,
yeah.
"Mhm."
Yeah, and they're like, okay, which this was actually good because he had to something goes on, he's gotta jump into the water, and he doesn't even know if the submarine captain is gonna be there.
Oh,
But
this was so cool. And again, this is another one of those moments of I've like this moment, I loved the way that they because this was a moment of this whole sequence. I felt so much dread. Like from
yes,
here on, the
yes,
movie really starts cooking when
yes,
he jumps. So they basically take a big, huge like helicarrier
yeah,
out into the middle of the sea to meet up with this American submarine that's going to take him to the location
yeah,
of the sunken Russian submarine. And it's not surfacing. And this is a
mhm,
submarine that he's been told is unlikely to surface, that they don't
yeah,
really surface that often. So, and they're getting shot at by a Russian vessel, and
right,
so the helicarrier needs to go away, and he just decides to just jump into the water with like a
yeah,
wetsuit on, and this is like the Bering Strait Sea,
yeah,
and just hope that the
yeah,
submarine shows up.
yeah, and he jumps in, and luckily they are there, like, these people come up and they tase him, right? Or
Yeah, I don't know why they would tase someone while they're in I'm like, that seems like
yeah, I'm
a
like, that's
surefire way to kill him.
yeah, yeah,
That was one of those
yeah,
movie things where I was like, you couldn't have just why do you need just put him you don't even need to incapacitate him. Just like throw a air mask on him and have him. I don't think
yeah,
they needed to do that.
no,
But
no,
I did like the way that they filmed this sequence, that the camera's kind of coming in and out of the water because there's like
yeah, it was cool.
waves there.
Yeah, yeah,
There's
yeah,
like a
yeah.
storm, and then when like he's like alone in the middle of the sea, which is also always like a very like palm
Oh,
sweaty
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
The idea of
scary.
being just like stranded in the middle of the sea, and it's also freezing cold water. And
Yeah,
the camera's coming in and out of the water, and when it pops back up, there's like two scuba divers that are
yeah,
like there next to him, and then it pops back up, and there's like another one on the other side,
yeah,
and then they tase him in the neck, which I don't think they need
yeah,
to do.
no.
But
But
They
then
take him to the
they
submarine.
yeah, they take him down, and then
Yeah.
he explains what you just said to the captain, played by,
Tramel Tillman, dude.
which this guy's gotten big too.
Dude, I love Tramel Tillman.
And
And the
I loved his character in this
oh,
because he tells him all of this crazy stuff, and you think he's gonna be like, "What's wrong with you?" He's like, "Do you expect me to well, I can't even remember do you remember what he says? Because the way he says it is basically like, "Do you expect anyone to believe that?" And he's like, "No." He's like, "Well, then you've got the right captain." Like,
yeah, he
he's
goes like
like,
this.
"I'm
He
your
goes
guy."
what he says to him is he goes, "We're gonna have to go over there, like we're gonna have to risk being seen because we have to raise periscope to go to
Mhm,
periscope depth so
mhm.
we can receive the VHF frequencies."
Yeah,
And he's like, and he goes, and he's like, well, if we do that, then the Russian submarines are gonna notice us, and then they're gonna like, he's like,
yeah.
so you're putting my men at risk, and he's like, I understand that. He's like, but that's the only way to do this, and he goes, well, if you want to poke the bear, you've come to the right man. It's
That's right,
like,
yeah,
you know, I just love his
yeah,
pace and his
yeah,
delivery. I love when he's like, you and your team were actually never, you and your decompression chamber were never part of my plan. And he's
yeah,
like, what exactly is
yeah,
your plan?
yeah,
I just
yeah,
loved I love how Tramel Tillman keeps calling
yeah,
him Mister because he
yeah,
doesn't know his
yeah,
name, and he's just like, Mister, if you're
yeah,
talking about going down there,
yeah,
he's like, he's like, we'll do everything we can to help you, Mister. I
yeah,
don't know
yeah,
what you're planning on doing,
yeah.
but I just
I
think
I thought he
his
played the character so well,
oh
and
yeah,
I like that they made him a little crazy, but, like,
yeah.
calculated crazy.
Do you know what have you seen Severance?
Yeah, I haven't seen season 2, I've just seen
Yeah.
season 1, but yes, I love him in that, yeah.
Oh, and the story goes that Tom Cruise was watching Severance and he like
Okay.
called Christopher McQuarrie and was like, "Get him." And
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
and so they literally were just like, "Cool, Tramel Tillman, come play the submarine captain,"
right, yeah,
and he kills it.
he
He
does, he's
absolutely,
awesome.
he's like such a highlight of a
Yep,
little cameo here.
yep,
And I do love. I again, we have the classic Mission Impossible trope of like explaining everything that could go wrong with Tom Cruise trying to dive down to
yeah,
this submarine,
yeah,
and them explaining to him why even with a decompression suit and a decompression chamber he's still most likely going to die
yep,
because of like the depth and the amount of time that he has, and them explaining to him like make sure you're breathing out the whole time you're surfacing because
yeah,
you'll get the bends and you'll die,
yeah,
and him trying to prep himself on the submarine by running on the treadmill with like like prep his
yep,
lungs,
yeah,
and just knowing setting up, they do such a good job in this sequence of like setting up again the stakes
yes,
of what Ethan needs to
yeah,
do here is pretty darn next to not doable.
exactly.
Y
It's pretty impossible.
yeah,
But then we also are following his team with Benji and Grace and, I guess her name is Paris.
yeah.
Uh, those 3, I can't remember if there's somebody else, but, they head to Alaska.
There's the black guy that
Oh, yeah,
is
that which I actually like that guy. I don't
yeah.
know.
He
He was
seems
a
like
good
an
little addition.
is he new or was he in Dead Reckoning
He was
too?
in Dead Reckoning.
Okay.
He was partners with,
The Steve
uh,
Zahn guy.
the Steve Zahn guy,
Yeah,
Shay,
that's right.
Wiggum or Wingham or
Yeah.
I don't yeah. He was his partner, but he decide I think his name is Greg Tarzan Davis. What a name.
Mm.
Yeah, Tarzan. Wow. All right. Anyway, he's there with them as well. They go to this base in Alaska where they're supposed to be getting the recordings or finding out where this, where they need to go,
Yeah.
and where the location of that Russian submarine is. And when they get there, there's a reveal. There's supposed to be somebody who's there, and we find out that the reveal is William Donlow, who was from the very first movie, the guy who created the CIA, that they
Black
had to break
Vault.
in the Black Vault. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes,
With the knock
and
list.
yep, with the knock
Yeah.
list. And in the first movie, after all that happens, what does he say? What is
I could not believe this. I watched the first movie and yeah,
yeah,
William Dunlow, we pick up with him 30 years later and he's been relegated to this, radio surveillance shack in Alaska. And I thought this was just something they wrote in to have this guy come
yeah,
back. No, I watched the first movie and immediately after Ethan and his team break into the Black Vault, Kittredge goes up to a guy and goes, I want that Donlow guy at a Radio Shack in Alaska by the end of the day. I
Yeah.
want him, and I was like, "What?" I was like, "That was in the movie?" And then so like in movie 1, they set up that Donlo has been sent to a SOSUS radio observation check
Yeah.
in Alaska. And we pick up with him 30 years later. He's married to like an Inuit woman, which
Yes.
is awesome.
It's great.
And but we also find out that the Russians beat Ethan's team to the punch and they're
Yeah.
already there.
Yeah.
And the problem is like, so now they're kind of being held hostage in this
Yeah.
base. And that's a problem for Ethan because there's a ticking clock.
Yep.
He's counting on his team to get those coordinates and to, in a like by a certain time. And if they're locked down with the Russians, they can't
Yeah.
really do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're there, and so Tom Cruise is preparing for this jump, and then his other team, everybody else is there with the Russians, and there's this standoff. And this was a great cross-cutting scene
Oh, this is
because
great.
so Tom Cruise is there, and then all of a sudden one of these one of the entities,
Disciples of the entity.
disciples, yeah,
Yeah.
like he starts attacking Tom Cruise, and Tom Cruise has no idea what's going on. So he's fighting, and then everything goes off with the Russians because Don Lowe is like, listen, they came in and they took everything, but like I memorized what the coordinates for the submarine were. And he's like, I was barely able to get it. So then basically everything kind of falls apart there. And so they're in this shootout with the Russians. And so you have these two scenes that are going on at the same time. And this cross cutting was great because they
Yeah.
they kept cutting, and everything again is just like, oh my gosh, how are they going to get out of all of this? Right. Like the tension was so great in
Great
both of these
practic
scenes.
great live practical fight scene here with Tom
Yeah.
Cruise and this
Yeah.
guy and this on the submarine, really like solid fight choreography and like
Hmm.
and just, kind of again, like I think Tom Cruise just sells it really well
Yeah.
and,
Yep.
I
Yeah.
like him kicking this guy in the face and
Yeah.
going, "You're on the internet too much." You know?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And then who kills does somebody kill that guy? Because he
Donlo?
doesn't. Yeah, no, 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 no. Does somebody kill the person that Tom Cruise is
Yes,
fighting?
another
It's
crew
the
member, another one of the
yes,
crew members of the submarine comes in and kills him.
right, right.
And
And
again, so
they
it's like throughout this whole franchise, Ethan's always getting like lucky breaks that
yeah,
somebody,
he is. Yeah.
it's
And I
yeah.
mean, but it also shows like because then the crew, it's good that they kill him because then the crew sees that like someone was infiltrated and
Mhm.
they were, so it kind of ups the stakes of like, oh, you never really see. But that's the only way that we get one of these disciples of the entity. Which we said they probably could have used more, but basically then Don Lowe, we think he's dead because the cabin starts on fire, but everybody was able to get out, and Don Lowe is doing. He finally gets the coordinates to the submarine captain with like 5 seconds left or whatever.
Yeah.
And
It's always
so
that in these movies. It's always like at the
exactly,
last possible second, they finally transmit the
yeah,
coordinates, but we find out, oh no, the coordinates are for literally the polar opposite
yes,
spot on the
yeah.
globe. Yeah.
Yeah, and then but this was kind of a little cool thing because then the Russians go there, and then they realize like, oh, Tom Cruise is like, well, if it is the exact opposite, then that's what he meant to do is to do the exact opposite, so that the Russians would go away. So Don Lowe, he's smart. He's a smart guy. He sent them in the wrong direction,
Yeah.
knowing that Ethan Hunt would realize that the exact opposite spot on the world is the location of the submarine. So they
Yeah,
go
and we
there.
and so they start heading toward the submarine, but then they notice that one of the Russian subs saw them going that
Yeah,
direction and
yeah,
started following them, and they're like, "Oh crap!" And so Ethan comes up with this plan. He's like, "Here, get to the location, turn around, and drop me off, and you guys
yeah,
head the other way and pull them away." But Tremel Tillman's like, "Well, but if we leave, you have no place to
yeah,
decompress."
yeah.
Like the plan for in Tremel Tillman's mind was Ethan will dive down using this really high tech compression decompression suit, dive down to the submarine, get the drive, come swim back up just to the where the submarine is, which is
Yeah.
already a hard resurfacing, decompress in their state of the art decompression chamber. And he's like, but if you don't have that, you're dead, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
But it's already been set up that Ethan's team has like an on the go decompression chamber, which is still
Yeah.
like, bro, like you're gonna swim all the way up to the surface of the ice and hope that they're at the exact place
Yeah,
you're at and that they can,
exactly.
and this movie's always get, but like this, I don't know how you felt when he opens up the door to go out into the ocean from this submarine. I immediately had this like pit in my stomach, like, dude, This is
Yeah.
one of the craziest things that Ethan Hunt has ever done in this entire franchise. Like,
Yeah.
dropping out of a submarine in the middle of the deep ocean, the
Oh,
deep like, Arctic Ocean,
yeah.
and also, like, the enormity of the Russian submarine that's right behind them when he,
Yeah.
like, comes out and you just see this giant submarine that's, like,
Yeah.
right in his face, and you're
Yeah.
just like, "Oh my gosh." And the way that this whole sequence is handled, the score here, that it's just
Yes.
sort of these low,
Low.
like, drones,
Yeah.
and that Ethan is, like, slowly just sort of moving past these giant objects, like
Yeah. Yeah.
this giant submarine, and he's barely missing the propellers of this
Yeah.
submarine and then diving down into the abyss. Like,
Yeah.
it gives me chills because it's like my worst nightmare to just be
Oh,
like,
yeah. Yeah.
I've just got coordinates and I'm just going into, like, the black
Yeah.
of the ocean with this suit on. Yeah, isn't that terrible?
Oh, I hate it. Yeah.
Watching this sequence, I was just like, "Dude," like,
Yeah.
and I know that this isn't like I know that Tom Cruise and the team aren't, like, actually deep sea diving. I know that they're
Yeah.
shooting a
Yeah.
lot of but in the story, in the
Yeah.
world of, like, what Ethan Hunt has to do right here,
Yeah.
that he's
Yeah.
just gotta dive into the darkness of,
Yeah.
like, the black abyss of the sea and just hope he finds that submarine. And if he doesn't, it's like, you're just down there in the
Yeah.
Bering Strait Sea.
Yeah. You're dead.
Y I just
You'll never be
in
found.
my body, I'm like, "No, there's
Yeah.
the ocean's not for us. We're not supposed to be in there."
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, it
full of
terrified me.
oh,
But yeah, like you said, the score, because that's what I was gonna want to. That's what I
mhm,
wanted to talk about too. The score in this
yeah.
is so good because it's just low frequency sounds, and it's just really slow. But it made me cringe the whole time with fear. Like, oh, when is he
I
gonna do this? Like,
This whole sequence, I was going like, "Oh," in my
yeah,
chair. I just kept going like, "Oh my gosh."
yeah, yeah, me too. It was
Yeah,
so he's going throughout the submarine and like he sees dead bodies that are in there because there's still some air in it, and he has to go get the what's it called, the subcolva or something,
yeah.
the Sevastopol's whatever. He's
Yeah, he's
got to
gotta
get
get
that thing.
this drive that's like the origin of the entity so that he can put
Yeah,
Luther's poison pill into it. You know, it's a MacGuffin,
yeah,
that
yeah,
but, what happens is once he's on board this, uh, submarine, because this thing has been untouched for whatever it is,
yeah. It was
20
2012, so like
yeah.
yeah, like 12 years or 14 years or something.
It's
Yeah,
been sort of weighted the same way, but once he's, like, twisting knobs and stuff, it just changes the weight of the entire
yeah,
vessel just enough that the thing starts rolling, and
yeah.
so now Ethan's in a rolling submarine that he's got that's rolling toward a cliff, and it's going
Yeah.
to drop all the way into the deep ocean,
Ugh.
and he's like yeah, it's just like
It's like
so this whole sequence, you're like, "Dude," like,
yeah,
he's in
yeah,
ch I love these shots of, like, him in
yeah,
chambers that are, like, half full of water,
and they're
and the
moving.
water's
Yeah,
just moving like this as the thing is and he's just trying to, like, he's just
yeah.
trying to move forward, and, like, they do such a good job of just putting the pressure
Oh,
on and
yeah,
of
yeah.
giving you a sense of, like, how utterly isolating and scary and terrifying and anxiety-inducing that would be
Oh, yeah,
to
totally.
yeah.
And, yeah, it just the tension is really, really high. I liked how slow this scene was
Mhm.
because, I mean, he's underwater, you can't go that fast.
Yeah.
But, a bunch of stuff is falling because it's turning, and you've got missiles falling and, like,
Oh, tho that
and
room
things.
full of nuclear warheads that are
Yeah,
falling on top of each other, and you're just like,
yeah.
"Oh," like
Yeah, you're like, "What the heck?"
yeah.
So it's like and things are, hitting doors. He ultimately does get into the room, he gets the MacGuffin, uh, and he gets what he needs, but he's like his way out is gone. He
Yep,
can't get back, he can't get out
yep.
the way that he came in. So he ultimately finds a, chamber, like a
A
torpedo
torpedo chute.
yeah,
Yeah.
and he gets in, but he can't fit.
He can't fit his suit in. He's got
Yeah.
this, like, decompression
So
suit.
he like takes his suit, he takes the pack off and he tries to put it in, but like it's still like nothing is really working. And like
This whole sequence just made me so physically uncomfortable that, like,
yeah.
like, he finds the thing, you're like, "Okay, good, he's just gonna
Yeah,
get
yeah,
out the
yeah.
torpedo," but then, like, he doesn't fit, and you're like, "Oh gosh," like,
Yeah.
and all the while the submarine's still rolling, but then he just makes the decision to just cut his
Yeah.
wetsuit off and just
Yep.
climb and, like, I just was imagining, like, the ice of that metal that
Oh my
he's
gosh.
climbing up that tube, and then the tube starts filling with water, and I
Yeah.
just was like I can't like, no. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and this is one of those things where maybe the movie's asking us to suspend disbelief a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
too
yeah,
much
yeah.
because it's like, I think
Maybe.
he's dead within a minute.
Maybe.
I think he's dead
Maybe.
within like 30
Well
seconds,
well,
you
and they
know?
do say, like, because it's so cold they said this earlier on in the movie, "Because it's so cold, it will slow down all your motor functions, and we can save you. We have at least a little bit more time." So, yeah, it's definitely like you would've been dead, but you're freezing to death,
He
but yeah, it
basically
is.
has to swim to the surface in
Yeah.
his underwear,
Yeah.
and
He doesn't
and
make it.
and we watch him getting the bends, and it's like, "Of course! Like, you were gonna get the bends in the decompression suit."
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like crazy,
Yeah.
and he just kind of hopes, like, maybe my dead body will just float to the surface and they'll be able to get the
Yep.
drive off of it. He's
Yep.
like, "If I can just get myself close enough," and then, Agent Carter pulls him out of the ice and
Yep.
throws him into the decompression chamber, and of course, he comes back to life because he's Ethan
Yeah.
Hunt.
They kinda gloss over it because, like, he has this vision of her, like, coming, which, I gotta say, I like Rebecca Ferguson. I liked that relationship a lot
Yeah,
more. Like, that rang so true. This last one with,
feels a
you
little
know
forced.
yeah, Agent Carter's, it just doesn't. I like her as a character, and I like her as an actor, but it just didn't hit. Like, the Rebecca Ferguson one really worked really
Yeah.
well, so I would have loved it that could have been that, but I digress. And so they have this weird, like, moment, and then he wakes up in the chamber, and they're like, "Hey," she's in there with him for some reason,
And I
and
guess this chamber is also, like, heated because 'cause they're both
yeah,
just not wearing
yeah,
clothes, and I'm like,
yeah.
Sure, sure,
Why
movie.
not? Go
Why
ahead.
not? It's Mission Impossible,
Yep.
sure." And, like, that there's so much that I forgive in this film just because I'm so entertained,
Oh,
because
yeah,
that underwater
absolutely.
sequence was so gripping that I'm like,
Oh,
"Yeah, sure."
yep.
Like,
Like,
you
yeah,
know
don't think about it too much.
yeah.
Like, it's and
On to the
it's such
next
a great, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, "Let's get to South Africa and wrap this thing up," you know?
Yep,
So now
yep.
they've gotta get to this vault where it's basically like the only like, it's like a vault or like an ark that mankind built that would be a record
Yeah,
of all their technology and their history if the world should ever go into nuclear,
yeah. All
apocalypse.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and, so they're going to South Africa where this vault is, and they figure that's where the entity is going to hide itself
yeah,
once it launches all of the nuclear weapons in the world, and their plan is to kind of trap it, and I do like this too, that it's like, they've got this drive that they
yeah.
can trap it in, but they need to pull the drive out as soon as the entity enters it, otherwise it'll
Yeah.
and it's gotta be in,
A
um,
millisecond.
like
Yeah,
100 milliseconds, I think it was.
yeah.
It was like, and they've sort of established this thing with Agent Carter where she's a good pickpocket, and
Yep.
Ethan Hunt's like, This is your job, blink of an eye. As
Yeah,
soon as that
yeah,
thing lights up, you got to yank it out, you know?
yep,
So everything
yeah.
is, once again, it's like the stakes are,
So
it's,
high.
it's got to be just so,
Exactly in
you
the
know?
right time. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, so they established that they're going to, they need all this stuff to happen. But the important thing is he's got to put on the key, the poison pill, and then
Right.
once it goes in, she's got to get it. Those are pretty much the important things. And they go to South Africa, and then they run into, it's kind of like everything happens because Kittredge comes in. He
Mhm.
kind of puts a wrench in everything.
Kittredge is
And
there, Steve Zahn's there,
yeah,
Gabriel's there,
yeah.
everybody's there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and so everything kind of doesn't go according to plan. And Gabriel, he has okay. He's got like a few henchmen, but
Mhm.
he's got this other guy who's why did they have this old guy? They have this like really, really old guy that's like he's got like the button to like set the bomb off because there's a bomb in there again. There's a nuke in there.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, he's got it." And I'm like, "Who's this old guy?"
Who's that?
Like, why? Like, it was just such a weird choice that, like, I don't know
Yeah.
why they had that guy do it. But anyway, he's like a really old, very unintimidating man, and he's got the trigger to the bomb. Kittredge comes in and kind of messes everything up. The bomb starts counting down. There's like 10 minutes,
It's
or
just like
whatever.
stupid Kittredge. It's like, do you really think you have a better plan than Ethan Hunt right now
Yeah,
to
yeah,
save the world? What
yeah,
are you doing?
yeah.
Like,
You're an idiot.
learn your lesson, Kittredge. Like, my goodness, you
Yeah,
know. But I also I like this little movie trope of like Gabriel's like up on this giant rock in this cave, and he's easily 100 yards away from
yeah,
Ethan and his crew, and it's just one of these things where like they're talking to each other like this.
yeah,
Like Gabriel's like, "Well, Ethan, it all comes down to this," and Ethan's like, "You wouldn't do it." And it's like, "You guys, you're on
What?
opposite sides of this cave. I know that there might be good acoustics in there, but, like,
Yeah,
speak
yeah.
up."
Yeah. How can you hear each other? Yeah.
Yeah, you know?
Yeah, that was funny.
But anyway, they once again, the team has to separate. Ethan sends kind of
Yes.
Benji and, the team that like, they're gonna go into the Ark and make sure that they
Yes.
capture the entity, and,
And we
uh
did find out that Don Lowe is still alive,
yeah,
and his wife is also still alive, so they're there with them.
his
But
wife's
yeah,
great
his wife is
character,
great.
this
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
great character,
She's good.
but, Gabe kind of escapes with the drive or
Right.
the and Ethan's got the poison pill,
Yeah,
and he's gotta put them together, and so Ethan goes after Gabriel, and
yeah,
they, drive these jeeps out of the cave, and
yeah,
and
fun.
Gabriel's already announced that he's got an escape route, which is like, and again, I like the justification for the biplanes because it's like
Yeah,
they
yeah, yeah.
wanted planes that would be analog and
Yeah.
disconnected from anything that the entity could infiltrate,
Yep.
and he says he brings 2 just in case, they set that up,
Yeah, yeah.
and boy, this,
Okay. This ending is like this is probably this was such a fun and thrilling ending. And like this whole sequence, once he gets on the plane, I was just totally in it the whole time. And I thought this is probably one of the coolest sequences in the entire franchise.
it's one of the coolest sequences I've ever seen in a movie
Oh,
ever.
it's amazing.
Like, I mean, and again, just knowing what was really going on practically,
Yes.
seeing some behind the scenes stuff that he is really hanging on and doing all of this stuff, and that it goes on for like 15 or 20 minutes.
Oh, it's a
Like,
long time.
it is a protracted, long action scene where Tom
Yes.
Cruise is doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's not just like it'd be like in Rogue Nation, they take off and he hangs onto a plane.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's crazy. It's
Yeah.
wild. This movie, he's like he's like climbing all over the plane, he's
Yeah.
climbing in and out of the cockpit,
And
he's having fights, he's
they're doing barrel rolls and he's hanging on. He's got to change his orientation, like
at one point
everything.
he loses his grip and he's hanging on by his legs. He's
Yeah.
literally just holding onto the wing with his legs and he's upside down, and I was like, apparently he had an earpiece in, and Christopher McQuarrie had to keep going, "Tom, you're smiling too much." Like, 'cause that's how crazy he is that he was just having a great time hanging off of these planes, and he kept going like, "Tom, remember, like, it's,
You're not having fun.
you're not having fun." And he kept being like, "Yeah, yeah, you're right, and, like, I
Yeah,
gotta
yeah.
lock in." But he
Yeah.
kept, like, laughing and smiling because he was
Yeah.
just having a blast,
That's
because
crazy.
he's such an adrenaline junkie.
Yeah. Well,
But
and I guess he had to like change how he was breathing because there's so
mhm,
much wind in your face. He's got anyway, you can tell he is physically having a hard time.
it's insane.
Yeah.
Every time they cut to a wide shot of what's going on, I was just like, "Dude,
Oh,
that's
it's
so
crazy.
crazy."
And I do love that this is such it feels so old Hollywood in the best way.
Yeah.
Because like, like you'd have trains and somebody would be on a train, like Buster Keaton would do this stuff and it's like on a train and it's like, wow, that's pretty amazing that he did that. They've got these biplanes that are just old. It just feels very old Hollywood, but it feels so I mean, you can feel everything, just like you said. Every time they do a wide shot with all the wind and everything, he is falling like it looks extremely difficult.
Well, and again, I think that the planes being old and the
Yeah, yeah.
analog,
Yeah.
this is all thematic. They're definitely
Yes.
Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise are
Yeah.
definitely making a statement with this film to the
Yeah.
film industry and to audiences that they're like, "Hey,
Yeah.
maybe you guys don't like our old school. Maybe we are a dying breed, but we're gonna go out swinging,
Yeah.
and we're gonna go out like with a bang." And
Yeah.
this whole sequence is such a good tribute to the entire franchise.
Oh,
It's such a good
absolutely.
tribute to like practical filmmaking that it's just
Yeah.
like, like to really just go, what's the biggest swing we can take?
Yeah.
So Tom Cruise starts out this sequence on one plane. He
Yeah.
punches the pilot of that plane out, takes over
Yeah,
the
the
plane.
old guy, the real old
Yeah.
guy.
Yep. He flies the plane up underneath Gabriel's plane and then climbs out of his plane and climbs onto
Yeah,
Gabriel's plane
it's
from his
insane.
plane. It's so crazy. And then he has this whole long fight scene with Gabriel where he's like trying to rock
Yeah.
him off of the plane and he's trying to shake him,
Yeah.
and at one point Tom Cruise finally gets like a position where he's like holding down the rudder of the wing and won't let
Yeah.
Gabriel
Yeah.
steer. And knowing that Tom Cruise is doing all this stuff is
Yeah.
so crazy, and seeing the
Yeah.
wide shots of it, and like it just keeps going and going and going. And the only moment where we see something that looks like a green screen is once the actor
Yeah,
playing Gabriel is out of the plane too, and
yeah,
he's hanging from the
because
plane,
yeah, he grabs his arm and he breaks his arm,
which I
and you see
loved this arm break.
I
This
thought it was pretty cool, yeah.
is
He he
awesome.
he, like, grabs her and he just totally breaks it, and the Gabriel is screaming, and they do a wide shot, and it is very, very apparent that it is green screen because
Yeah.
obviously this other actor is sane,
Yeah,
and he's not gonna put
he's not
he's not
doing
gonna do
that.
what Tom Cruise did, and
But I
that's like
really yeah,
but it
I
gives you this
this
huge it gives you this whole like, you see, like, everything else has been real, and this other green screen, even though it looks good for a green screen, like, you could tell it's totally fake, which makes Tom Cruise's thing even more amazing.
this arm but yeah, this arm break was gnarly. He's using
Yeah.
basically the force of the wind. Like he basically because he's been hanging on for dear life this whole time, and he basically is like, I'm gonna let go and just hold on to your arm, and I'm just gonna
Yeah.
yank your arm back and just yank it out of its socket. And it's just like, oh, like,
Yeah.
and then I also loved in this final sequence, like they're both kind of hanging out of the plane,
Yeah.
and Tom Cruise is trying to regain control of the cockpit, and Gabriel's like, he's like, you don't have a parachute. I have a parachute.
Yeah.
And I thought this was so funny and awesome. Him like
This
letting go and being like, "Good luck, Ethan," and he like lets go, and then his face just slams into the like rear rudder of the plane, and it just like splits his skull in half.
Yeah, and he dies. I
Yeah,
thought it was, like, such a weird way to kill him.
I thought it was awesome.
It felt very, like, Naked Gun,
Yeah,
like, "Good luck," and then he just rams into the rudder. I was like, "Wow,
but I
okay,
think it
he's
was one of
dead."
those things where it's like, bro, you're not Ethan Hunt. You
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
like,
Well, yeah, it was
it's
like,
like,
"Yeah, you're dead."
yeah,
So
you're dead, bro.
but yeah, he has to regain control all the while, which we haven't said yet. All while this is happening, everything back at the bunker, they realize Don Lowe realizes that he can just defuse the bomb, but just like Luther, there's going to be an explosion. But we find out that they
Yeah.
have 10 seconds to run into the server room, which
Mhm.
they'll be safe. So that's fun. And then so Paris and Agent Carter and Benji all have to go into the server room, and Benji has been shot.
Mhm.
And I actually really liked this sequence because you're not sure if Benji's going to make it or not. You know, like he could definitely die, but he has to walk Paris through how to keep him alive so that he can walk uh, Grace through how what she needs to do to get everything ready for the entity.
Yeah, he
And
kind of he has Paris do surgery on him
yeah,
to, like, help a collapsed lung, and
yeah,
then while he's kind of in and out of consciousness, he's explaining to Grace what,
yeah,
it's like he keeps, like, passing out and then, like,
yeah.
coming,
Yeah,
and
which I thought Simon Pegg did a great job in this.
yeah,
As I mean, he realizes he could die, but he's gotta keep everything going. And even
and
they slap him at one point. He's like, "Hey, what the oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah." Like
yeah.
he was
Once
managed to bring the comedy in, which was good.
Yeah, once Gabriel's off this plane too, that we're cutting back and this is, great. We're cutting back and forth to these two different
Yeah.
things. Once
Yeah.
Gabriel's off the plane, uh, Ethan realizes that the plane's on fire and that it
Yeah.
is diving and it's going, and he can't regain control of it. So he decides there is another parachute, I guess, and he decides to
Yeah.
jump. Parachute is on fire. And this was so crazy that he's and like in the air, Tom
Yeah.
Cruise, who's a great skydiver, is trying to put this poison pill onto but also like he pulls the parachute, it doesn't work. It's burnt, it catches on fire. And so then he's falling with this, he tries to pull the reserve. And basically what we see of Ethan Hunt is that he's falling into kind of clouds, and it looks like he doesn't have a reserve chute or anything like
Yeah.
that. And he's basically going to make the sacrifice play and be like, as long as I can get this poison pill in this drive before I hit the ground, we've
Yeah.
got a shot, and we don't see what happens with Ethan. What we see is what we're waiting for is like this light to turn on that means that the poison pill is in place.
Yeah.
And what we see is right as the bomb's about to go off, the light goes on. Grace gets the
The
entity trapped in
entity.
the drive, and the bomb goes off, and everybody makes it to safety. I'm
Yeah.
curious to know your thoughts here because my personal preference for the end of this film is Benji and Ethan should die. I think
Mhm.
Luther, Benji, and Ethan all make the sacrifice and they go out in a blaze of glory.
Yeah.
All three of them go out and they, and they
Yeah.
all are heroes who saved humanity. And
Yeah.
that's the end of our story. And I think, unfortunately, doing the thing where it's like Ethan lived. He was
Yeah,
able to
yeah,
pull the reserve
yeah,
shoot, and he makes it like we could always come back. And I'm like, don't
yeah,
though,
yeah.
don't.
I totally see where you're coming from. I'm kind of torn on it because it's like, okay, spoilers for James Bond, the last James Bond that they did with
Yeah.
Daniel Craig. They kill him, right?
Hmm.
Like they kill James Bond, and I'm kind of like, did you really need to do that? Like, I know it's his last one. So but that movie was executed in a different way.
Right.
And this movie, like, I could see his death because I mean, Tony Stark dies, right? And it's like
Yeah.
that felt so
Exactly.
fitting.
Hmm.
And having Luther, Benji, and Ethan die could have been like, yeah, that feels very appropriate. But I wasn't like, so I'm kind of like in the middle. Like, I'm
And
fine that they lived.
if someone's gonna live, maybe Benji to me is like the
Yeah,
one who,
yeah, I could see that. Yeah,
like Benji makes it through. Because to me, it's like what we've really established after we did Mission Impossible 3 last, and I said this
yeah,
could be an ending to this franchise.
yeah, yeah,
Ethan rides off into the sunset, he leaves the
yeah.
IMF, and he gets married. What
Right,
we find out in Ghost Protocol is that was never going to work. It's never like
right.
Julia was going to be in danger being married to Ethan, and he realizes
Yeah,
that his life is in the field and that he's not able to have relationships like the one that he wanted to have with Julia.
yeah, yeah,
And it's sort of this tragic life similar to like the one James Bond has where it's like you don't really get to have those personal relationships. So there's not really anything for Ethan to look forward to
yeah,
in like retirement. It's like he's just going to like I feel like Ethan Hunt feels like a character who's fated to die in the field saving the world. And what a better way to go out than like this film,
yeah,
buying Earth another chance
yeah,
against our foibles with our technology and stuff.
yeah.
I don't know. It just felt like that we could have just
We
said, "Job well done, Agent
Yeah,
Hunt," and,
yeah. You definitely could have. And I don't know. I am positive that they considered for sure that ending.
mhm.
And maybe they even shot it and they could have tested it and maybe it tested really bad. Um, because Tony Stark's death, like it was set up and it just worked really, really well. James Bond's death didn't really work well, in my opinion. So this one is kind of like, okay. So again, that's kind of why I'm like, yes, that would have been a great ending, but also like how it ended, I was fine with because I think it's more like it seems very much like Ethan is done. He's like, I'm good. Like I'm out. But yeah, hopefully they don't bring him back and do another one. Like that would make this ending bad.
I mean, I'll go see it. Like,
Yeah, I will too.
I'll go watch 65-year-old and 70-year-old Tom Cruise keep
Yeah.
at it,
Yeah.
but I just feel like this is a solid ending for this 30-year franchise, and I think let it
Yeah.
let it end. Let it
Yeah.
let it be a nice, solid, capstone. There's a moment here in this ending sequence where Ethan kind of gets congratulated by Kittredge and the different
Yeah,
people,
yeah.
where
Yeah.
the Steve Zahn guy, who's I guess John Voight's son,
Yeah.
does this thing that I was just like, that's so stupid. He walks up to him and points a gun at him,
Yeah.
and then puts the gun aside and shakes his hand. And I
Yeah.
was like,
That
that's
was dumb.
so dumb. Like that he's like, hey, job well done. And I was like, hey, how about don't point a gun at me right now?
Yeah.
Like,
Just fuck with
hey,
the sky, dude. Like,
yeah, and
yeah.
it's like if you were just gonna come over here to shake my hand, like the movie, it's like this thing where the movie's like, oh, he's gonna shoot him. He's still mad at him.
Yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
he's gonna shake his hand, and it's like,
Yeah.
but that's just dumb. That's just like
Yeah.
a thing that I don't think a person would do. I don't
Yeah.
think any person would ever be like, hey,
Yeah, yeah.
nice,
Yeah.
you know. And
Yeah, that was great. It was very
yeah, I was like,
for the movie.
dude, for
Yeah.
the movie for sure.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, whatever,
Yeah.
movie.
Well, and
Um,
they had we did forget there's a whole thing going on with the president.
oh, we missed all that
We
stuff.
did,
Yeah,
which actually I thought was great because
yeah.
everybody's telling her, "Listen, you need to launch a preemptive strike, and we need to sacrifice one of our cities to show that, like, we got hit or something," right? Like,
Yeah.
like, we're not just killing everybody just to do it. So, like, she is faced with this huge problem of, like, "Okay, which city do I take out of our own?" 'Cause they give her, like, the top cities in the US, and, I'm gonna kill all these other people. So she has this huge decision that she has to make.
And
Ultimately, she
they
says
say it's like 100 million people that
yeah,
are
yeah,
estimated to die by
yeah,
this decision. Yeah.
yeah, and she's like Everyone's telling her what to do, and then she ultimately says, "No, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna take all of our nukes offline."
Yep.
Which I mean, it's executed so much better in the movie
It's
than what
very
we just said.
similar. She says something that's very similar to The Dark Knight, where when the
Yeah,
guy
yeah.
goes, "I'm gonna do what you should have did 10 minutes ago."
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
she says, "I'm gonna do what we should have done from the start, which is
Yeah,
let's just take the silo offline, let's take the
yeah,
arsenal offline, and let's just not let the entity get in." You
yeah,
know? And when she does that, one of her Secret Service agents is like, "No, like you're gonna like this decision is going to," and I don't
yeah,
necessarily know that this is like a cult member of the entity cult. I think he's
yeah,
just a guy who's like, "I disagree." And since there's no time to like voice my
yeah.
disagreement, I'm just gonna have to take matters into my own hands and kill you.
I thought it was one of the cult members,
Could be.
but yeah, they don't get into it much. But this whole time we think Nick Offerman is one of the cult members because he asks for a gun. Like
Yeah.
he's like, "Soldier, give me your gun," and we're like, "Oh crap!" But he's the one who ends up taking out the other agent,
Yeah.
and he sacrifices himself. Which this was also one thing that I was like, "Okay, that didn't land." Like I don't even know who
Nick
Nick
Offerman's
Offerman
death
is. Like
Nick
I don't
Offerman's
really
death
care.
was also just like it was kind of weirdly acted.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I
yeah,
was like,
yeah,
I like Nick Offerman a lot, but he's just
yeah,
kind of like, "Ugh."
yeah.
Kind of like did like this really like
Yeah.
dramatic death that I was like,
Yeah.
all right.
Which I love Nick Offerman as well. I think he's a
Yeah.
great actor. But yeah, this one was like I didn't really get it.
Yeah, but I
But
do like this idea of like this decision is so
yeah,
important
yeah,
that people would be willing to kill you if they disagree with you
right.
because the stakes are that high.
Yeah,
And I feel that in that moment and in that scene, and I feel that throughout the entire movie.
yeah,
But yeah, our guys win and
yeah,
they defeat the entity for now, and they all, kind of smile at
yeah,
each other, and like I think it's like
yeah,
Trafalgar Square or something, or Piccadilly Circus maybe, or something.
yeah.
And
Somewhere.
they all walk off into the
Yeah,
distance, and
yeah.
that's the end
And
of the movie.
that's
And
the
that's
end. And
and that,
we'll see if it's the end of the franchise. We'll
yeah.
never know until they announce it. So
So we're going to get into our scores for Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. We give scores on this podcast out of 10, 10 being the best. We score the technical rating of the film, which is like the craft of the film, the writing, the construction, the technical aspects, the acting, the score, the musical score. We score the ending. How well did the movie stick the landing? We score for rewatchability. How likely are you to rewatch this? How likely are you to enjoy rewatches of this film? We give a score for cultural relevance and impact, and we give a score for our subjective feeling about the movie, how we just subjectively enjoyed the film. So Kramer, what is your technical rating for Mission Impossible 8: The Final Reckoning?
my technical score is a 9. Um, and it could be anywhere just because like all the stunts, it's so much of the actual technical style of filmmaking and the analog style of filmmaking that they did. I think it is so well done. And then, the acting is amazing. Like Tom Cruise gives a great performance. All the other actors give a great performance. Uh, there's definitely a lot of cheesy parts, as we've talked about. Definitely a lot of parts that are like, okay, and it kind of drags a little bit. But everything else is so good. I can't see, like I it just outweighs everything else. Like the cheesiness and the stupidity of some of the things I totally overlook because everything else is so good and so entertaining. So, yeah.
You basically had my exact same response, which is like the technical aspects about this film that work are
Yeah.
so good that they
Yes.
make up for so much of the other stuff that you could criticize. I
Yeah.
was tempted to give this a movie a 10
Yeah. Yeah.
because that's how good the stunt work is, the action, the
Yep.
execution. I'm so impressed with what they did. It's so hard to not give them a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
But when we are looking at the technical score of a film, we are trying to rate everything, the
Yeah.
writing, and
Yeah.
there are, there's moments in here that didn't land for me, and there's moments that are
Yep.
cheesy. And if the other stuff wasn't so good, I might have this at like an 8 or a
Yeah. Yeah.
7.5. But it's so good in the aspects that work that I have it at a 9, where I'm like, I'm only docking 1 point for some of that stuff that, like the gun and the
Yeah. Yeah.
handshake, or the prolonged
Yeah.
conversation between Luther and Ethan that feels like it goes on for too long, or
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
maybe one too many flashbacks in the first act.
Yep.
I'm forgiving all of that because that submarine sequence and the airplane sequence are so good
Yeah.
that they basically kind of I just am like, how can you not
Yeah.
give that as high of a rating as possible?
Yep. Yeah.
So how about the ending of this film?
The ending, I gave a 9.5. It just, as we talked about, this whole sequence was so well edited, so well acted, so well choreographed. Everything was just total. It was such a fun ride to see the end of this movie. And I think that taking off half of a point more for kind of like Nick Offerman's death didn't really land, and like the really old guy that's riding the plane, I didn't really get, but
I don't know who
um
that is.
yeah. Like so, but it was so much fun. Loved it.
We are 2 for 2. I'm 9.5 as well, where I'm like, I very easily could give this ending a 10 because it's just
Yeah.
such a thrilling ending. But my personal preference is like, I kind of want Ethan Hunt to die just to
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
give the franchise finality
Yeah.
and know that, and I think that it would be thematic and it would work. And that's my preference. And like, I'm just like like little nitpicky things, but it's
Yeah.
as close to a 10 as it could be, and I'm just knocking half a point there.
Yeah.
Um, how about the rewatchability of this film?
Rewatchability, I gave an 8.5.
Mhm,
And the biggest thing is because I think as you continue to rewatch this film, it is long. It
mhm.
it doesn't feel like overly long. Like they definitely could have made it shorter, but it there's a lot of flashbacks, a lot of things that could probably get a little bit more corny as you watch it. But I want to rewatch it. And I think it you could rewatch it, and these sequences are so much fun to watch. So
I'd like to go see it again before it leaves theaters, to be
yeah,
honest.
yeah.
I'd like to experience it one more time in theaters. I gave it a 9 because
Nice.
I this whole franchise is just a very rewatchable franchise. It's just it's something I come back to every few years, and I'm like, every time they have a new one coming out, I'm always like, oh, let me check back in with the Mission movies. And every time I revisit them, I'm like, yeah, this is just a. I said this during when we were talking about 3. This is just a franchise that goes down smooth. It's
Yep.
just like it's
Yep.
just an easy watch. It's fun. It mostly all works,
Yeah.
and Tom Cruise is always killing it.
Yeah.
He's just always like so entertaining and so
Yeah.
watchable.
Oh, yeah.
How about cultural impact?
I don't know if I should do this higher or not. I gave it a 9 because it is the culmination of everything. This has been such a successful franchise. And I mean, like you said, every movie is really, really good besides 2. But like they doing 8 movies and having the vast majority of them be really, really good is an extremely hard thing to do.
And 2 is like
It's still fun.
it's just a very stylized film.
Yes.
It's a
Yeah.
very it's just it sort of just feels like it belongs in a different
Yeah.
world,
Yeah.
but there's still stuff in there
Yeah.
like that opening of Tom Cruise free climbing
That
in
was awesome.
Moab is
Amazing.
insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy. Um, cultural impact, I gave it a 9 because
Yep.
I feel like, I actually think this is probably going to mark the end of an era.
Mhm.
Not just the era of the Mission Impossible franchise, but the end of an era of a certain style of filmmaking.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise were very aware of that while they were making the film. And I think that in time, in generations to come, filmmakers, they're going to talk about like what this franchise meant to the
Yeah.
industry and what
Yep.
Tom Cruise meant as a movie star. And this is such a like great example of who he is and what he does.
Yep.
And it's all there. And I think that this movie's gonna continue to have a place in the hearts
Yeah.
and minds of fans for years
Yeah.
to come. Uh,
Absolutely.
where's your subjective score at?
My subjective score is a 9.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this movie. Like I said, just me and my son went, and it was such a great theater experience, and it's such a fun movie. The problems, are why I docked off the one point that we've talked about, but just such a great movie and a great way to end a franchise like this. Like it's like it's crazy how you can top all the things that have happened in this franchise, but this is right on par with all of them. And that plane sequence was absolutely
Yeah.
amazing. So
I'm at a 9.5 subjective
nice,
score.
nice.
All the criticisms that I absolutely had of it in my head as I was watching it kept getting erased by how much
Yeah,
fun I was having.
yeah,
I just kept not caring because I was like, yeah, but it's boy, I'm
yeah,
just having a great time.
yep,
When I watch a Fast and the Furious movie that comes out lately, I can't ignore the many criticisms that I have while watching those films
yeah,
because the action scenes don't like make up for it. They almost
yeah,
make it worse. Like
yeah,
like the action scenes happen and I'm like, this is this is maybe the worst part. Like I can't go like, well, this was so well executed that, but these mission movies, anytime I have an issue with anything story wise or script
Yeah.
wise or
Yep.
performance wise, they'll get into a set piece where I am just completely immersed and
Yeah.
transfixed and blown away by what they're doing on a technical level.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the movie, I'm like, I don't really care about any of that stuff. That movie was awesome.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, I'm at a 9.5. We
Love
had
it.
very similar scores for that film.
Yep.
Uh, have you seen it? Weird if you watched this podcast. If you haven't seen it, go see it. Go see it again. Let's help this movie be profitable. Let's send this franchise out with a bang.
Yeah.
Next week we will be talking about the movie Friendship, the Tim Robinson and Paul Rudd film. Go see
Yep.
that if you haven't. If you would like to watch along with the podcast, we already saw this film and we already recorded this episode,
We did.
and
Yes.
it was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun.
We had a
Yeah.
really good time with Friendship.
We did.
Um,
And go see
so
that movie. It's really, really well. If you like Tim Robinson,
yeah.
and if you look him up and realize and like his comedy, go see that movie in the theater. It's great.
Yeah. But that's it. Let us know what you think in the comments, and like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. As always, we will see you next time